Jason Gilbert here, taking a look at GPP picks for tonight's slate. A lot of bad pitching, so we do have a lot of hitting options going here. If you want to check out GPP arms I talked about, you can head on over to the pitching pod up on the site now. Looking at the Yankees-Orioles first here, Luis Severino versus Ubaldo Jimenez. Small sample sizes for Severino in terms of what to look for. I mean, we've seen good outings out of him before. Obviously, some talent is there, but we've also seen him kind of go up and struggle against right-handed bats. 370 WOBA allowed to right-handers last year, 1.78 home runs per nine. Small sample size. I mean, dealing with guys like Manny Machado, Adam Jones, Mark Trumbo is always an issue, and even Chris Davis from the left side. And before kind of we jump into things here all the way, DK did price up a lot of these bats. Just I think to basically hang with the pitching, because if they were kind of priced normally how they've been over the last few days, you basically be able to roster whoever you wanted. On FanDuel, you can basically do that. So do note the pricing differences between the site. So back to the Orioles here. I do like them as far as one-offs go. In terms of a stack, I mean, kind of tough to work all of them in. I don't mind it. I think really you're probably just looking at maybe one or two guys here and hoping that the one-off power really hits, which I do believe it could. On the Yankee side of things, expensive. Yuri Sanchez is a big price difference from both sides, $5,500 on DraftKings, $31 on FanDuel. The same kind of goes for Schwarber, who we'll talk about. You look at Jimenez, I mean, struggles against lefties last year, 378 WOBA allowed, 1.53 home runs per nine. Big fan of Greg Bird, like his price on FanDuel. I mean, 2.4 there. Gardner and Ellsbury are a better price there. DraftKings are a little bit priced up, but Yankees aren't bad options. Move to a better ballpark here in Baltimore. They're certainly playable tonight. Miami, New York. On the Miami side, I'm not particularly interested in anyone here. You don't see a ton of upside really out of Stanton. That's about it at this point. Zach Wheeler, still a good right-handed arm, but is coming off of kind of injury issues and working his way back into basically being a full-time pitcher again. On the Mets side, I mean, two guys that I do have interest in, Yoenis Cespedes. Chen is home run prone to right-handers, 1.79 home runs per nine last year. Wilmer Flores is the other guy, over 400 WOBA, over 370 ISO last year against lefties. I mean, absolutely ridiculous numbers for him. Flores obviously homered last night. Might come in a little bit popular just because of recency bias, but this is a guy you can certainly play against lefties anytime an opposing pitcher is one. Toronto and Tampa Bay, Francisco Liriano, Matt Andriese. I'm not particularly thrilled with this game in general. You look at Andriese, this isn't the guy who you really don't see a ton of upside out of these guys. I mean, was okay against lefties last year. There's some home run potential for Morales again, who's coming off the grand slam. And in terms of against righties, I mean, Andriese was decent as well. Does give up a reasonable hard contact rate. So, I mean, you can look at guys like Bautista, Donaldson, Devin Travis, who's an option on FanDuel at 2.4 still. Outside of that, though, I mean, I don't particularly love this game on a fuller slate. Last night, I liked it a little bit more. Oakland, Texas, A.J. Griffin versus Raul Alcantara. This one, I mean, look at A.J. Griffin. His struggles do come against the left side. 406 WOBA last year, 2.88 home runs per nine, 44% hard ball rate. Matt Joyce, a reasonably cheap play. Stephen Vogt, a reasonably cheap play. Two lefties to really exploit. A.J. Griffin was decent against righties, but still home run prone. So I don't mind going with the Ryan Healy, Chris Davis. I mean, I think the A's will be contrarian on a full slate. So I do like those bats against Griffin in a better ballpark here. As far as Texas goes, they're all very playable. You're all going to get them at reasonable ownership, so it's not going to be anything contrarian. But I do like those guys. I mean, people will probably take some shots with Joey Gallo. It's just a deep GPP play because this guy is basically going to strike out 4 times or go 1 for 4 with a homer. You're not going to really see anything outside of him. But guys like Nomar Mazara, Shin-Soo Choo, Carlos Gomez, Mike Napoli, Rene Odor, Jonathan Lucroy are all in play for me tonight. Moving on here, Minnesota and Chicago, Derek Holland versus Phil Hughes. On the Chicago White Sox side, I can't get behind a lot of these bats, but you can use Abreu and Frazier in terms of GPPs. Just because you do look at Phil Hughes, 3.35 WOBA before the injury last year, 1.94 home runs per nine. He's big fly ball pitcher. In that ballpark, it doesn't particularly play well, but it is cooler. It is a cooler game. I mean, below 50 degrees will drop down. That does help pitchers a little bit more. On the Minnesota side, I do have a lot of interest against Holland in GPPs. You look at what Holland did to right-handed bats last year. I mean, did give up a lot of home runs, 1.44 home runs per nine, 35% hard contact rate, 3.46 WOBA allowed. So guys like Brian Dozier, I mean, Robbie Grossman, Miguel Sano, all big-time upside against right-handed pitching. Sano's really gotten off to a hot start here, showing some upside. Dozier, we know what he can do against lefties. So I like the Twins. They do get a bump in park factors coming over from Minnesota. Vegas isn't showing them a ton of love. I'm kind of hoping they fly a little bit under the radar tonight. Royals in Houston, Jason Vargas versus Mike Fiers. If you're looking at Royals bats, they're certainly going to be contrarian. You're probably going to get them at less than about 7% ownership on both sides. One, because no one really chases a lot of Royals upside because there isn't much to be had. You do look at Fiers, I mean, pretty average against lefties, but he is a reverse split pitcher against righties, 3.58 WOBA allowed. The only real righty, two righties, I guess you could say, Salvador Perez and Lorenzo Cain, that can take advantage of it. But Cain's usually a guy that target against lefties. Salvador Perez is a shot you can take in tournaments as well. On Houston side, though, I mean, Vargas has been nothing but a league average lefty with some home run potential for these guys. I mean, Springer's a guy who I expect to carry some high ownership just because of his numbers against lefties. And he's been one of the few Astros that should be doing stuff here early on in the year. But I do like 1 through 4 here. Evan Gattis is worth a look. Curious to see who else they slip into the lineup. But in play there in that ballpark, there is some home run potential. But George Springer continues to be kind of the higher upside guy. But we know what Altuve and Correa and Bregman can all do as well. Chicago, Milwaukee, Jimmy Nelson versus Brett Anderson. This is probably one of the more interesting PPP games because you look at Nelson has struggled against lefties in his career. That did continue last year, 3.40 WOBA allowed, 2 lefties, 1.15 home runs per 9. Schwarber has a big price difference between the sites. It's much like Gary Sanchez. If you look at Schwarber, 5K on DK, and you look at FanDuel, I mean, he's only 3.1. Chicago, much better plays on FanDuel. 5.5 for both Bryant and Rizzo. Zobrist 4.7. Zobrist isn't a guy I just don't want to play at 4.7. He's more just a piece of the stack, but I think they're all one-off potential. I don't see it as a stack tonight. And as far as the bottom half guys, I'm not particularly thrilled with. On the Brewers, though, I mean, Jonathan Villar is always interesting. Ryan Braun, Keon Broxton, if he's in the lineup, Domingo Santana, all interesting guys against a lefty, Brett Anderson. The one thing about Brett Anderson, though, is he does roll a lot of ground balls. The good thing is he doesn't strike out a ton of bats. He doesn't miss bats, so that does help these Milwaukee bats that are pretty free swinging. Moving on, Cincinnati and St. Louis, Amir Garrett versus Mike Leake. We'll start with the Cardinals here. With Garrett being a lefty, I do have some interest in guys like Johnny Peralta, Dexter Fowler, Steve Piscotty if he's in the lineup. I don't mind those guys. Piscotty did have an over 200 ISO against Southpaws last year, so there is upside. Not the greatest ballpark. Weather's not particularly terrific in terms of temperatures. I don't think there's a ton of potential, which is why I think they're better one-offs in this game. And with Mike Leake, I mean, this guy's someone who does struggle against lefties, always been remotely average. Basically, Votto, Billy Hamilton, Scott Schebler are the only real 3 options you can take advantage of, and you'll get him at sub 10% tonight. Cleveland, Arizona, Shelby Miller versus Josh Tomlin. You're not going to get any low-end guys here. You're looking at basically at one of the highest scoring games of the night, and what should be basically an offensive explosion on both sides. But we still want some exposure to it, even in tournaments. Santana, Lindor, Brantley, Encarnacion, Jose Ramirez, front 5 that you can look at. You want to get weird, you can use a Tyler Knight one. I don't hate that. You look at Miller last year, 400 WOBA allowed to lefties, 1.47 home runs per 9. On the other side, I mean, Tomlin is extremely home run prone. He is a reverse splits guy, so guys like Pollock and Goldschmidt have the advantage. But you still look at the home run potential for guys like Lamb and Peralta. It's there. I mean, 1.64 home runs per 9 to lefties last year from Tomlin. So in that ballpark, you can certainly stack away on both sides. Definitely get some pieces. Even in GPPs, you can be different elsewhere. Seattle, Los Angeles. Giovanni Gallardo was god-awful last year, struggling against both sides of the plate. As far as, going with the Angels, I mean, Trout's super expensive. Never a guy I fully would just want to pay up for. Cole Calhoun, Albert Pujols are really the only other power sources, and this is not a great ballpark to really chase power. So I'm kind of staying away from this one. I don't think there's a ton of upside. I like some of the bats on Seattle as far as like Seager and Cano and Cruz and their prices go, but I don't know how much upside they have. I mean, in terms of just this matchup, it might be a Cano homer, a Seager homer here, but I don't know. I think in terms of the game, there's better stadiums to really go chase offenses in. So let's wrap things up here. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com and check out our great tools and content.